That's one thing.
C'est security reasons. Really scared for your children.
Mais t'as mis ça entre guillemets, j'ai noté.
I don't really believe in it.
She says her security reasons. Is it really more unsafe today on our streets than it was when we were growing up?
I think it is. I think that there are so many cars on the streets and people are not paying attention and the drivers themselves are inattentive. I don't think our kids are safe on the streets.
Well, I know that my sister was run over by a car and thankfully recovered from her injuries, but you know, that was back in 1972. I think that streets and cars are dangerous, yes, but they always have been. And I find that our media, and certainly this is supported by Richard Louv's research, our media has magnified the dangers that exist out there to such a point that we are a fear-driven society. We are fear-driven parents. We carry that over into all areas of our life. Is there another comment?
It's fear-driven, but the idea of being afraid of cars and all that, I mean, I live in a place where there's one car every hour, okay? And there's hundreds of acres to go. The same thing happens there, kids stay indoors. Decrease in the number of children in our community, the average family 35 years ago was 6 to 10. Today it's 1 to 2.
Okay, so maybe less children to start with.
The inside things, and then the thing with security is it's an illusion of insecurity. We listen to the news that broadcasts every violent thing that happens all over the world, and some way we're affected by that, and we project that or a mini part of that onto our situation.
And then I'd like to build on what you're saying. Let's just go back to a nice nature picture here. I'd like to build on what you're saying there, because at once we are feeling more anxious, more afraid of going outside, and yet the outside holds the answer, and research has shown this time and again, in reducing our sense of stress, in reducing our sense of anxiety and fear. That's something that Keegan was talking about, you know, riding his bike in a forest that he now knew, and an area he now understood, and his fear dissipated.
I'd like to make one more point about that, because of my experience in another life for 30 years, is that no one will believe this, but you're much safer now than you were 40 years ago.
And this is true.
All crime rates have gone down.
Yep.
Except there's some in the juvenile area that have gone up slightly. Okay?
Yeah, and when you talk about, you know, child abduction and kidnapping and all of that, those rates have gone down the most significantly. And the number of non-family related child takings.
If you ask the citizens of Canada to rate that, they'd all say it has increased it by 200 or 300%.
Yeah, you've got that right. Sarah?
I just think that part of that is that our cities have become much more anonymous. People don't know their neighbors. So why would you trust people that you don't know? Even, you know, letting your kids play out in the street, if you know that even if you're not outside, your neighbor is looking out the window and everyone is looking after each other's kids,
That's right.
you feel a lot safer. But if you don't even know who your neighbors are, you don't get that same sense.
It brings us to the wrap-up of my section before I hand it over to Mike and Jessica and Keegan. And that's that we need to create spaces that are accessible, that are natural, that are inviting and welcoming, and will induce and elicit that kind of neighborly interrelation. If you all ride your bikes to the same park, well, guess what? Those kids, even though they lived on different streets, maybe spoke 2 different languages, 4 different languages, depending on where you are, they will become friends. They'll have a social interaction. Oh, you rode here too, so did I, and look at this, and let's go there, and let's try this route. At Evergreen, our mission is really to reimagine our cities with nature. How can we insert nature into our urban lifestyles? And we have 2 main programs that really focus on this: Learning Grounds and Common Grounds. Learning Grounds, we offer funding and support for school ground greening. Are you enjoying the French slides so far? Yeah? What that slide actually is saying is talking about how the average student spends 25% of their day out on their school grounds. I want you to picture, before I show you the next slide, picture your school ground from your primary school when you were growing up. You got it? Got it in your minds? Okay. The average Canadian schoolyard looks like this. So 25% of the day is spent out on this space. Is this going to help us address our disconnect from nature and from the natural world? In Quebec, c'est la pire de la pire de la pire. Nos cours d'école sont des coins, des carrés d'asphalte trop petits vraiment, même pour réaménager. So our school grounds in Quebec are so small in little squares of asphalt that it's even hard. You have to be really creative as a landscape architect to reimagine them into something more interesting and workable. So at Evergreen, what we do is we help provide the tools, the resources, and the support for communities and schools to come together in a participatory process and reimagine their school grounds into places where there's shade, protection from UV, where there's biodiversity, native plants being added to the urban landscape. In these strategic places, where else in the city do you have these little squares of undeveloped land? Schoolyards are really strategic urban greening zones, where you have the possibility for other kinds of social interaction. Either during the school day, take the kids outside, have an outdoor classroom, rather than turning to page 17 to learn about the burdock plant, go outside and there's one of our non-native plants that's been here a long time. and a place to find that serenity and to find that peace that is so often missing. So if we look here at this group of grade 1 students who have budgeted to use their Evergreen funding to build garden boxes, who have lugged those heavy bags with the help of the grade 6 students over to the garden boxes that their parents and their community built, and now they're in there spreading their hands in the dirt, having a great time, and they're about to plant seeds and grow food for the first time in their lives. When I hear the kinds of dialogue like we had in the Aboriginal and tar sands presentation earlier, for those of you who were there, it is so overpoweringly negative and so hopeless as a situation. Often we can feel that way. And yet when you awaken the wonder in a young person about the pérennité, what's that? The foreverness of nature. When you awaken in a child the understanding that, you know what, no matter what we do, nature will always be there. The seasons will always change. The birds and the caribou will always attempt to migrate, no matter what sort of barriers we put up. We need to instill a sense of wonder, but also a sense of réconfort, of reassuring. Of reassuring our youth so that they feel that the world is there for them, that it's not going to disappear. That whole concept of ecophobia, only talking about the problems. We have to just make connections. You're not going to protect something you don't know and love unless somebody's standing over you with a rule. And we all know how often we actually go 30 kilometers an hour in a 30-kilometer zone when we're driving. So even those rules don't always apply. So I encourage each of you to bring back today, after listening to these two young people who have been impacted by these experiences out in nature, getting to know their natural world, to go back to your organizations and put your hats on together and think, what can we do to better reconnect ourselves and our youth to the natural world? What can my organization bring to the table to create more accessible green spaces, more opportunities for that free exploration that a lot of us were remembering?
It's a great honor to be here today to talk to you and have some of the young people who've worked with me. I think about one very great man, E.O. Wilson, and you even spoke to me about him at one point. E.O. Wilson came up with the idea of biophilia, our need for nature. It's inherent in each one of us. We're born with this connection to nature. And somehow or other, in our society today, so many people are drawn away from it. And I heard a word here earlier, the word connection. And I think that that's all about what we're trying to do. And I don't know with you guys, but I've often tried various projects as a elementary school teacher, trying to engage my youth, trying to get them interested and excited about something. And some things just don't work. No matter how you do, you blow your hair out. I lost quite a bit. and ideas just don't work. And then one day I went for a walk around our school, downtown urban Ottawa, and I went for this walk through a little brush, and I came upon a wetland. And I thought, my God, that's here? I've been living here for so long, and I never knew there was this little wetland here. So I said, there can't be very much in here. I mean, it's just like 100 meters by 200 meters by another 100 meters. I mean, this wetland, what could it sustain? So I went back, you know, I'd bought a new camera, and I started taking a few photos, and then before I knew it, I'm saying, my God, there's tons and tons and tons of stuff here. I was wondering, who owns this? Who owns this place? And I found out it belonged to Beechwood Cemetery, which is now the National Cemetery of Canada. So I went to the directors and I said, you know, I need to bring my kids to this little place. It's fantastic. What do you think? Would you allow me to bring children to your cemetery? And interesting enough, the director said, well, you know what our slogan is at Beechwood? It's a place for the living. And I thought, that's kind of interesting. I never thought of a cemetery using that kind of a slogan. But they really have followed up on that slogan because they really like the idea. This is a place they can't really use. It's a wetland. You can't bury people near it. So they said, make it into an outdoor classroom. And I said, well, do I have some ideas I want to explore with you? So I said, what if we actually create a physical outdoor classroom, but with huge, huge windows around it that are open concept, with no glass, nothing. You just go underneath it as basically it's a shelter. That's all it is. And let vegetation and plant life and everything grow all around it. And we'd be able to watch the migrations and watch the insect life and look under the rocks for salamanders, which, to my surprise, there was a huge population of salamanders, and frogs, and at least 50 painted turtles in there. I've seen red foxes running through there. I've seen deer coming in there. And it's in the middle of urban Ottawa. It's like maybe half an hour walk to Parliament Hill from where we are. So I got the Beechwood group interested in what we're doing. Then I went to my school principal, and they were really excited by the idea of what we were doing. So we set up a subcommittee. We started working on this. We raised $100,000 to bring in endemic trees, to start taking out all these trees that, of course, are invasive, like everything from the buckthorn and garlic mustard and everything else that comes in. And we started doing a count. Well, 1,300 species later, we have got the attention of the United Nations, and they got all excited by what we're doing. So Jessica and I and a team of us went to Sweden one year, and we were presented as one of the best ecological projects of what was 2006 in the world.
Wow.
We were like, oh my God. So this project started evolving. And actually, if I could just show you something here. Could I get, I just want to click on the Macoun Marsh section.
Okay. Which is,
Right.
oh, right up
Just
here?
click this one, yeah. There we go. So our Macoun Marsh project, and basically in the summer, you would not think you're in the city in that little space. We started to make connections with the convention office here in Montreal. And before we knew it, we found ourselves putting together an international event last summer in Ottawa where we brought together youth from all over the world. Actually, if we could click on this picture here, that's a good shot.
This one? Okay.
Yeah.